so we don't touch anything. Okay, so I will do my speech after the one from John, and John described many things I will cover too, but with some little announcement I will explain later. So I'm Etienne Vauytherin, and I'm working at Orange as an iOS evangelist. What is this kind of job? In fact, I'm very happy to have this job because this job is to play with the latest technologies. For example, it's currently augmented reality, AR, nearby connectivity. I test this kind of technologies, and what I need to do is to extract what could have an impact on a specific activity for Orange, you see. So I'm not alone to do that, but it's a really really enjoying job at the day-to-day time. And sometime I meet some larger playgrounds for my playing. And one of these larger playgrounds has been, one time ago, RX Swift. RX Swift has been a very great experience for me because I have discovered that learning RX Swift, I was able to understand and to see and to read some RX JS code. And it's my first experience of something that is a concept which is very well defined, that can be expressed later in multiple languages. So this is the first experience I have, and this is something I have kept on my mind for the later. On WWDC 2011, Apple announced iOS 13 and Swift UI and Combine. It has been a big shock for all of us. And so on my side, I've begun to learn what declarative UI mean with Swift UI and transpose the knowledge I have from RX Swift to Combine. On the meantime, Orange asked me to scratch on latest Android technology because they are missing people on the Android side. So they told me, Etienne, do some development on Android side. For me, it's very difficult because this platform has evolved for 12 years at the time they asked me, and have no clue on this platform. But by chance, Jetpack Compose was announced at this time. So it was a blank page for everyone, for me, but for all the Android developer too. So I have the chance to be a guide and to have some people who give me the hand on the web to explain what is this Jetpack Compose thing. And the benefit is that as we have common concept, and in particular the state concept that John explained, and that the UI is a function of the state. This common concept, when you learn Swift UI and you learn Jetpack Compose at the same view, you understand not only the API, but the concept itself. So it has been very useful for me and a great help for the next topics. The other common things is the unidirectional data flow. Just the idea, because we will come back on this later, you have the UI. The UI emits some actions with side effects or other things, or other part of the application emit actions. These actions are used by the current state to produce a new state, and the new state give a new UI. So you have this cycle here, which is a very mathematical cycle, in fact, and this is the strength of this approach, because you can write this equation. The next state is a function of the current state and the action you have. In another view, you can see this with on the lower part, what is the platform, what is the concrete things, what is the physics of the things. Your device is there. And you can elevate your mind or the way you conceive the logic of your application with pure mathematical vision. And in this case, this is a reducer, which take the state, the action, and produce a new state. But this is a pure functional things. And it's something that I like very much. So John called this part the boring part. For me, it's the marvelous part, in fact, because you can dream when you are outside the lower physical part of your application. You can imagine what you want. You can compose. You can make what you want, and what you need is to produce some real things. So you need to land to have these things. So this is the cycle, the unified data flow cycle. On another way, you can see this as an imperative action produced by a side effect. You make an abstracted declarative flight. So you can say, Houston, we have lost Etienne. That's not a good idea to let him play with the rocket science, because what we will find Etienne now. But the idea is to have a platform landing at the end of the flight. And all the work I have investigated is to make this possible. So the main idea was to use for the flight, the reactive flight, reactive pipeline. So the difference with what John showed you just before is that the combine operator that John used was on the subscription part, was on the view model. But in fact, on the John slides, you have two combined instructions, one for SwiftUI, for the SwiftUI model, and one for the Jetpack Compose view model. But in fact, if you take the combine operator and put it inside the borrowing part, in fact, the reactive pipeline, you have the same combine operator, which is declinated 2 times, one for each platform. So the idea is to have this imperative action, the reactive pipeline, and a subscription, which is something that is called collect on Kotlin Flows, and which is sync or assigned with combine. I will go back to the difference between combine and async sequence. But the idea is to have the description of the reactive pipeline on one language, and this language, in this case, is Kotlin Flows with KMM, because we can generate a binary for every platforms interesting us, iOS or Android, with the same code. So we express the reactive pipeline in KMM using mainly Kotlin Flows, and we have platform native application and a common logic with KMM. So the best thing is to show you that. So I hope that I will not make two mistakes because I need to change the screen. Where is it? Okay, perfect. So I have this very little application. It's not a very that is working here on Android. Here you see it's a Jetpack Compose application. We have exactly the same here. On iOS. So you see that the user interface is very similar, but the code is also very similar, as John demonstrated sooner previously. Where is? No, not this one. Here. So if we look at the view itself here, this is the Jetpack Compose view, and here is the SwiftUI view. Oh. I will not go in every details, but as John demonstrated, it's very similar. You see the same structure, mainly, no, it's not the right. My screen is too small. Okay. Content view here. You see the VStack and the column are the same content. But again, John has demonstrated very well this part. If we look now at the code, in fact, we have here the shared library, which describe the common logic of the two applications. And this common code here is defined as an interface. Again, the idea is to have a conceptual description of what I want to have in my logic. So this is just an interface which describes by default what is a calculation. No, I will not go in this part now because we have no time. We have some football to see. So here we have this interface, and the Android application here, you see that you can have an Android specific description for the shared library. In this case, you have no Android specific description because the Android application will consume directly the interface, which is a Kotlin interface. So we have the view model here, which consume the area calculation here with, I forgot to describe it, the combine operator here, which represent a complete pipeline in reactive programming. It's a very simple one. It's the simplest we could imagine. But you see, the idea is to put here all the logic with reactive programming. So on the Android part, we are just here consuming this, and we instantiate here the two flow, which are described as abstract flow in the interface. Here we say that they are mutable state flow. Here we have instantiation. We are in the lower part of our application. So you can instantiate. And to have the side effect, to launch the value, we define the two actions, set width and set height, which just put the value on the corresponding flow. It's not very clear, I suppose, for most of you, but we can explain more if you want. But the idea here is here. You have the action here, which are defined, and you have the usage of an abstract interface which describe what is the calculation. This is on the Android part. On the iOS part, you have more thing to do, because what KMM generate is Objective-C code, in fact. And in Objective-C code, you don't have generics, you don't have the possibilities right now, because it could change, but to transmit a protocol or an interface from the Kotlin code to the Swift code. So we have to instantiate here. So we define a class here, which will be an Objective-C class by compilation. And in this class, we define the same thing as we have done for the Android part, but with something else. We need to have the flow here, which are defined when we instantiate. And we have no value to put on the flow. So we define this nullable flow, which are in fact, we are not really working. And we use a filter here to use the flow when there is a real value on them. So it's just a little trick to be able to define flow without any value. Because if you see here we define with initial value. Here we are unable to define an initial value for the iOS part, so we are using that. And then we are defining the area which call the calculation from the interface. And I have put this function, which is just to show how to use asynchronous call in Swift, even if we are in a Swift combine part, you see. So with the first operator, in fact, the first operator let us to create a suspend function in Kotlin, which will be an asynchronous function in Swift. So now we will see the code in Swift. And this code, you see, I can describe here the view model. But the problem is that we are assigning, we are defining many things like these subscriptions, which are very specific to combine. So it's not a talk about combine. So I don't want to go in too many details here. So I will just show you something that is very new in iOS 16, which are app intents. An app intent is a code that could be run by iOS without launching the embedding application. So what I have done is that I have defined a calculation intent, which is the launching of the logic that I have described
To get the voucher.
before. And this little code here instantiates the native calculation object that we have seen previously in Kotlin. With the Slifas function that John described here, we are able to create an async suite function, which is the corresponding async area function in Kotlin. So we have here this value which is waiting for a return from the Kotlin code, and here we set the width, we set the 8. When we have two values, the combine operator perform his task. So we have a result here. We are waiting area, and we return this on a result for the app intent. So now I can show you with the simulator, which you don't see here. This is the shortcut application on iOS. I will explain more just after. So if I see what is the code inside here, it's in French, but you have this intent, which is now which can be used inside this application shortcut, which is for automation inside iOS. I have this app intent, and you see that I can define some value here, which are the two parameters here. And the problem with I run, I don't see it. So it's why I have, because the simulator here is a very small version. So you don't have the result. I think you can see it. I've managed to see it. Okay. Yes, you have the run here. So you have the result here. So you see it's a very complicated path for a normal user. But we have more. Yes. So the idea is that Apple is working on automation for this, doing some machine learning, in fact. So when you are, you don't, the goal is not that the final user write things like that, some of these kind of scripts. Is that user will use your app intent sometimes when you are at Paris, or when it's raining, or when you have launched before a Facebook application or something like that. He will make some statistics and probabilities that you will have the intent to run this or that code. So just as example, just before, when I was writing my slide, I had this little advice from the shortcut application, which tell me, because I've done some try, and it seemed that every afternoon I was trying to define a focus on this thing. And you see that he will create, in fact, application for you. iOS will create soon application for you. It's my guess. It's not announced, but and I think that there is many sign that he will do that. Another sign is the do not disturb focus among iOS developer who has defined the do not disturb focus. And do you define it with the settings application, or does it appear one day on your system? In fact, it appears one day on your system and you click yes. But it's a way to create new applications with machine learning, in fact. And the focus settings are very complicated. I have no time to describe all the mistake I have done, but the idea is here. You can have an intelligent activation that means that the behavior of your device will change on some conditions, which are the time, the place, what are you doing before, etc., etc. So just doing a very little app intent, as I've demonstrated in Kotlin code, you can be prepared to this kind of general application here. So I finish my talk. Just an advice. I'm working currently for Orange, but my employer will give me more time very soon to be able to do other things. I will remain at Orange, but with some time. So I will publish more things. Today, you have no many things on these links here, but I will publish all the code I have shown today, and with some explanation. And I'm also ready to ask your question if we have some time.